We'd like to welcome you to the Heart Leader Podcast, where heart and mind align. I'm your host, Amber, and I'm here with co-host Austin, and we'd like to know, do you have a passion to make a greater global impact? Are you ready to embrace leading with heart and love? If so, join us on this journey to become heart leaders who change the world. Each episode brings heart-centered connection, building stronger relationships, communities, and businesses. Let's take a deeper dive into what it means to be heart leaders. The Heart Leader Podcast starts now. Hi, and welcome to the Heart Leader Podcast, where heart and mind align. I am your host, Amber, and today I have guest Greg Kimble here with me. Greg is a heart leader in the community, doing some amazing things on a couple of fronts. He has one of the largest sound studios in Denver called KMG, and he turned it actually into a way of life. So we'll let him talk to you a little bit about that, but he calls it KMG Life. And from there, he kind of springboarded into being a coach and a mentor and touring around the world, speaking to individuals about how they can create a life kind of in this similar movement. But he does this because he started from a very interesting path, one that you might only see in movies or read about in books. So he's here today to kind of share his journey and talk about the role that ego played along that journey. So Greg, awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, honestly. And then I get to see Austin, which one of my favorite human beings of all time. So, anything that I can do to support you guys and share the story and give people inspiration, I'm all for it, and I will always show up.
That's part of what makes you such an awesome heart leader, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, yeah, let's jump into it. Well, how can I help?
Well, for me, when I heard your story, Austin was sharing a little bit with me when I first met him and the first time I met you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no way. Like that. That sounds like it came right off of the front page of a news story.
Yeah.
And then the more I got to know you and the more I heard about that journey, it's inspiring. And it's something that if somebody is in that situation right now, or knows someone in that situation right now, it would be so helpful for them to understand that there is something more that's possible. Mm-hmm. And so if you'd be willing to just share where you came from and a little bit about how you navigated to where you are now, I think that would be really beneficial.
Tying this into the subject matter with it being as it pertains to ego, it's really interesting because I've lived like all the way, in my company now, the Final Percent, all the way on each side. And it came from me watching the ego from when I was a young kid because I had an extraordinarily poor family. And I still remember getting made fun of because I didn't have the right jeans on. I was the kid who had to get help with the lunch money at school, and then my parents would have to make up the difference. And if we didn't have it, I would go there and use the little card system they had, and I'd have my tray of stuff ready, and I'd go to checkout, and they would literally not let me have lunch. And I just remember the looks on other people's faces on what that kind of did to me and what it was making me at that moment. And I think there's a lot of people who are running into specifically the constant pursuit of more. And when you are in a state of lack, or at least from a mental standpoint, you tend to try to overcompensate in absolutely every place that you possibly can. So you get into these conversations like, oh, I'm the world's first trillionaire, when they know that's not true. Or I've got all these cars, and my other car's in the shop. My other car's the Batmobile. I've got houses all over the world. And so you get into these things. And, I actually had a podcast last night with a really good friend of mine. He goes by Ben Humble. And I asked him, I said, what's intentionality mean to you? And we talk about in coaching, what people are looking for, this silver bullet. What makes it okay? And I teach, when I'm helping people, I teach people all the time, like, you have to kill the silver bullet, because they think they paid you to do something. Now everything's going to be easy. And it's not the way it works. You've never seen, Bill Belichick hop on the field and show his quarterback how it's done a couple times in the middle of a game. It's just not how coaching works. But I asked Ben, hey, how do you be intentional? What's the secret sauce? And he immediately, without hesitation, just goes, stop lying. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to other people. Just stop lying. And I think ego is kind of the art of lying. And so I went through a lot of things. There was a chapter in my life where I really just wanted any kind of significance. So I would tell anybody anything they needed to hear until, going all the way back, I actually hacked into an investment bank and took a bunch of money, and I was flying to Las Vegas. This is when I was like 19. And I'm doing the most illegal things that you possibly can. And I had like $30,000 in my pocket, and I'm flying my friends to Vegas, flying my friends to Santa Monica, and I'm doing all this craziness, all because of ego. Because I want to be the guy, because I always had no money. I'd never had anything. And one time, and this is when my life really, really changed. I was getting ready to go on a trip with my friends because, I was a cool guy with money. So everyone wanted to be my friend. I opened the door, got the money in my pocket. I opened the door, and my dad's standing there. And he looks at me, and I go, you live in North Carolina, so
what are you doing here?
Why are you here? And he looks at me and he says, Greg, the fantasy's over, and it's time to come back to reality. And then my mom walked up. And then my friends walked up. And I realized at that moment that my life was over. And I thought, how am I ever going to rebuild from this moment? Because everyone knows the truth of what's going on. And my dad looks at me and he says, I should have done this so long ago. And he hugs me. Because my dad was always in the pursuit of, I have to work for the family, I have to provide, and we never had enough. And I just remember just breaking down into tears as he hugged me, and he goes, we're going to get through this. And I had all my friends there, my family. I didn't realize that that's actually the wealth of life, the people that you have in your life. And when you find people who are willing to go through something like that with you, when you've been lying to everybody, that's a place that you can build from. And I will never forget that feeling. And I think that's why I made that choice. It's like, I don't care what I have to do. I'm not going to lie to myself or anyone ever again. I can't do it. And so my creditors, my life just blows up. And, I've made a lot of promises based on having this flow of this, that, and the other coming in that just immediately stopped. And I made a promise to myself that every creditor that calls my phone, if I don't have it in my phone, I'm going to answer it. And I will negotiate with whoever it is. And I will pay my debts. And I will pay the medical bills. I will pay the PlayStations and the airline tickets and the this, that, and the other. I have got to make this right, because if I don't make it right with me, I'm never going to be able to be right. And that was a pretty arduous journey. And I just remember going so driven by ego and what's going on. And I blew my life up like that multiple times because I wanted to live for me. And so I got married way too fast. I ended up in, Austin knows this story very well, because, if it wasn't for his friendship, again, that person who shows up at the right time, I was not in a super good place coming out of that marriage, because what happened is I was in a relationship with someone I loved, like 100%. I loved this woman. We just weren't right for each other. And we were together for about 1.5 years. And I went through talking with her about, do we take the next step? Do we not? But she was so controlling And I was uncontrollable because I still wanted to go out and sing and be the musician and do this. And so we broke it off because neither one of us really knew who we were. The problem was I had all this emotional baggage. I had this suitcase that said her name, this suitcase that said her name. This is what happiness is. This is companionship. This is this, this is this, this is this, this is this. And I was at a show, I was singing, and there was a girl who took an interest in me. And in me now realizing with the work that I've done, what I did is I took all that baggage and I said, can you hold this? And then I asked this woman 3 weeks after I met her, will you marry me? And we got married. And it was terrible. A year later, we're getting divorced, and that's when I decided to go to Denver. And so I restarted my life again. And all of these moments were these rash decisions, and I want to be married. I want companionship. I want significance. I want people to love me for things that I do or things that I have, but I never showed anybody who I was. Not even this woman that I had married. She had no idea who she married. I had no idea who I married because she was just getting out of a very similar thing. But when I got to Denver, I had to make a decision, and this is kind of where my entire personal growth journey starts, is I was coming up over Vail Pass, and I had an SUV, so they probably thought that I was okay. But I'm coming from Arizona,
yeah.
So it's only rear-wheel drive, and it looks like a wiper blade on the road. And I'm going like this, just trying to get over. I'm pushing snow. I can't see the guardrail. And I'm driving, and I'm thinking, and it's really interesting because when I made the decision, okay, I'm getting a divorce, I'm moving to Denver, I'm doing all of this stuff, you start off thinking, okay, I'm going to conquer the world. But it's like a 14-hour drive. So like 4 hours in, you're like, I have just ruined my life. And then 4 hours later, you're like, I'm going to conquer the world. Then everything's convoluted. Then you're just through all these emotions. And when this has happened, I remember having the conversation with myself like, Greg, you just killed yourself. Like, you're not going to make it off of this. Because, you know, if I hit the guardrail, dude, like, what is going on? It's my first time on this road. It's I-70, which is basically a death trap in the winter. I didn't realize that at the time. And at that moment,
a rear-wheel drive car that
literally, I was a wiper blade. I was just doing this, trying to get any kind of traction. And then these blue and orange lights come up behind me. You know, no, it was not the Denver Broncos coming to save me. It was a snowplow. And this snowplow comes up behind me, goes around, gets right in front of me, and I follow this snowplow all the way down. And I began to start checking my ego because I had started, I'm going to take over the music industry. I'm going to do this. I'm going to this. I'm King Kong, doesn't have anything on me. But watching this snowplow, it helped me recognize and realize that I don't have all the answers. I don't have this figured out. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. So I need to find a metaphorical snowplow. I need to find someone in Denver who has done it before, who knows the music, who has moved the snow so that I can have some sort of path. That's why mentorship is so unbelievably important. It is basically the best place that you can put your money, in my opinion. Mentors that I have run into are literally the difference between me making it and not making it on every level of my life, is the mentorship that I've received. And so I have this rule of 3 in my company. You should always be both a mentee and a mentor. Now, if you can get into relationships where both can exist, those are extraordinarily rare. But that was when I said, okay, I'm not who I think I am. And that's why I love the saying, you know, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Because we're all trying to play to our ego based on what we think other people are thinking that we are. But the problem is if, like, for instance, if I'm saying I'm going to be this person that I think Amber thinks I am, and then we just take a peek into your brain, you could be going, I wonder what kind of food I'm going to have later. You're not actually thinking of me in any capacity, but I'm overanalyzing. I'm trying to be this thing that actually doesn't exist. And so I love in the book that Will just put out, Will Smith, is he says, the truth is undefeated. And I was talking to somebody probably 2 days ago and they ask me, where do your speeches come from? What do you do? How does it always seems different. You don't have the signature speech. How are you doing this? And I said, I have two rules when I talk. I believe what I say and I tell the truth. So I don't have to remember what I said. And the belief is just coming from my experience, coming from things that I've read, coming from experiences that I've had, coming from people that I've met. And if I can just speak my truth unapologetically, then everything's going to be okay. And some people really, really like it. Some people absolutely hate it. But quite frankly, I don't care because I'm not living for them. And some people say, oh, well, that's ego. It's not. Ego is really something that is so different to every single person. If you talk to, very, very like high level, say, pastors, their ego is way different than the congregation. Their ego, the ego of a salesperson. But anybody who, gets on a podcast like this and says, hey, I've done something, look at me, has some form of ego. And that's one thing that I tell people when you stand on stage, when people ask me, how do I deliver this speech? How do I do this? How? And I say, first of all, you have to develop a level of confidence and fortitude. And you have to know that you should stand there. And you have to believe that you have lived your truth, lived your speech to where you should be talking. And so many people have the problem with, thinking that it immediately goes to idolatry. But everybody has a voice and everyone has something to say. It's just, do you allow enough of your ego to put you into a state of momentum or movement so that you can actually start helping people? It's like that saying, a smart person learns from their mistakes, but a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. If you've made those mistakes, stand on stage, help people not make the same mistakes. Help people understand. If, today in 2016, after I had my snowplow thing happen, I just went all in on personal growth. I've read to date a little over 1,000 books since 2016. Not all of them are good, to be very clear. But when you talk with a mentor, I can inventory and index everything that has really affected me, affected my clients, and I can go, okay, cool, this, and this are applicable to your situation. And what you're doing is when you get around people who tell their stories, when you get around people who want to make an impact, you are actively compressing decades into days. And that's our real job. And it takes ego to speak. It takes risk to speak. And a lot of people are getting ego and risk confused because ego gets risky. Why? Because people are going to judge you. People are going to comment. People are going to say, who are you to say this? I'm Greg. That's about all I've got for you. And if we can start understanding, am I scared of the judgments? And most people, they either are scared of the judgment or they're not speaking the truth. And I think when you get a relationship with your ego, it is going to help you get into a state of action. And most people are just sitting there playing the game of shoulda, woulda, coulda, and they don't actually take action. I was talking to my friends and they were like, ooh, I love Greg's stories. Greg's stories are awesome. And I was like, is this a backhanded compliment or what does this mean? And so I just started kind of processing, what does he mean by this? And what I realized is the reason I have so many stories is I have just taken a tremendous amount of action. I have taken action on my life, action on myself, action in my marriage. I have tried to get better. I've tried to teach. I've tried to learn. I have failed so many times. It's unbelievable.
But it doesn't sound like you've tried. You've done.
Yeah.
Which is very different. It's like the Yoda saying, right? Do or do not. There is
no try. And that's true. And that's the thing. You only actually lose when you quit.
Yeah. So. And that's the point of the story, even through all of this. And I remember you had mentioned there was a time you were actually living in your car.
Oh, well, so after the snowplow happens, I get into Denver and I'm going, okay, where do I take this? What do I do? And I realized that I have the choice right now to finance a bed, which means I'm going to go try to get approved for an apartment, which at that time I probably couldn't have because my credit score was LOL. If you run it, it comes back LOL. It's not even a number. So I couldn't have gotten in there if I wanted to. And so I'm thinking, okay, do I try to get a roommate? What do I go on Craigslist? What am I supposed to do? But then I thought, what if I start my business? What if I just start my studio? And so I went and talked to absolutely everybody who would take a meeting with me. And I got into 400 square feet. Austin actually helped me hang foam in this studio. 400 square feet when I started out, and I would sleep in my car. I would actually sleep in the studio. And at the time, I didn't realize when I signed the lease that the landlord's office was right next to the studio. Made it very interesting when you have to play music loud, and when you thought that you were going to be able to sleep on the couch in your own studio. Because there was one time I remember I was coming out of the bathroom and I had just shaved. And he goes, Greg, did you sleep here? I was like, yeah. Late night, got a ton of work to do the next day. And so that happened a couple times where he's like, just so you know, you can't live here. Read me the riot act. So I started sleeping in my Nissan Armada. And I would sleep in there. And I remember it being so cold that I went to Nordstrom Rack with the money that I could get, and I bought snow boots because most people would pay me in food, they'd pay me in random things, and I got snow boots, which my dad actually still has because I gave them to him, and he's just like, love those boots. They're the best boots that I could have. And I actually saw him the other day when we were up in our cabin in Wyoming, and I was like, oh my God, you still have those boots, and brought back so many memories because it was snowy, it was cold, and I just wanted my feet warm. And I remember the first time I bought snow boots, and I was sleeping in parking lots, and I was sleeping. I would go to 24-hour fitness because I had one of those old memberships way back in the day. They had this thing, if you buy like 3 years in a row or something, you just have a membership for life. And I was working at Guitar Center, and so I had this big windfall from a commission. I just bought the thing. So I have like an unlimited thing to 24-hour fitness. So that's where I would take showers. That's where I would get unsmellified, if you will. And when I was in this situation, I realized at that moment, it's like, okay, what is the first version of getting better? What is it gonna take? Because I was getting smashed by the other studios. I had, I paled in comparison to anyone else's gear. And so I was going, okay, the only thing that is going to separate me is if I get knowledge. Knowledge is the great equalizer, and it's also the thing that, from time, energy, money, and people, if you have better knowledge, you can utilize all of those resources better. So I'm like, okay, I'm going down this thing. And so I had an intern at the time, and I had this crazy girl who wanted to hang out with me named Kayla at this time. Ends up being my wife. Absolute light of my life, and she's incredible. Shout out Kayla. But what happened is we had no business. We're not making any money. And so I say, okay, here's what we need to do. Let's go to Barnes & Noble, and let's just read books. So this is pre-2016 when I really started on the personal growth, and I started on Audible. We'd go to Barnes & Noble. All three of us would read everything we possibly could. And then we would go to a bar or something afterward, and we would talk about everything that we read that day. And that was our first version of speed reading. And there was one time that it was a beautiful summer's day in Colorado, and we were like, I don't want to sit in Barnes & Noble. Let's just go to a park and let's throw a ball. So me and the intern at the time were throwing a ball back and forth, and Kayla's sitting there. I think she was still reading a book just because that's who she is. And all of a sudden her phone rings, and she goes, thank you for calling KMG Life. How can I help you? And we booked a session. We were like, yay, booked a session. We're going to be able to eat like something other than canned something tonight. And then my phone rang, and I booked a session. And then our intern's phone rang, and then her phone rang, and then her phone rang, then my phone rang. Pretty soon we were booked up for like 3 months. And we were going, how did that flashpoint happen? To this day, I'm never going to know. But every time we would read, we would do marketing efforts. We would do the things that they said in the books. That was our first version of mentorship. And ever since I watched the result happen, because I don't know if it was 3 months or 4 months or 5, however long we were doing that. But that was the first just real honest to God thing. I was like, oh my God, I'm personal growth works. Knowledge works. This really works. And so I would order in CDs, and then I found that crazy thing called Audible, and I just absolutely went nuts. And now I'm the person who, instead of like most people when you get into a debate, they will Google a bunch of things and try to spit facts at you. I will just keep my mouth shut, and I will be ordering every book on the subject in case we ever have the discussion again. Because then I'm like, in this book and in this and in this I read this. Have you? And then it's a completely different discussion because I'm coming from a place that just didn't make the top 10 of something I Googled on the internet. And that's how most people live their life. But we don't understand that the way that the algorithm works is it is always going to give you supporting arguments. And so we're never seeing the other side of things and allowing yourself to explore, but also the ego can start trapping you, and it's going to say, oh, well, there's no way that's true. I am not going to listen to you. I'm not open-minded. This is what's true for me, and I'm never letting you in. And so it's this thing that you have to understand and kind of banter with. It's a little bit of a game of tennis. It's like, when do you need to be put in check versus when do you need to be put in action? And you're going to have this relationship with the ego that's inside of you. But one of the sayings I heard out of a book, and I cannot for the life of me find this book again, but he says, ego means edging God out. And if you think that it really is only dependent on you and you are so awesome, you are not leaving any room for something supernatural to happen in your life. And that really, really hit me hard, because if I think that it's only me, then God's going to go, okay, cool, you've got this, bro. And I truly firmly believe that, people who go through their life and they're waiting on God or mystical puppet master, universe, whatever anyone wants to say, I respect all of it. But I don't think that we're waiting on a reaction. I think it's waiting on us.
Yes.
So that's the big thing. It's kind of like people talk about nowadays the singularity. When we really get quantum supremacy and we understand it, then aliens are going to come down and talk to us, because it's kind of like in Star Trek when they find warp drive for the first time. Then aliens are like, oh, they're advanced enough to talk to us. I think we have to reach a state of awareness to where we can really interface at an actual human level. But we tend to divide, and we tend to only talk to people who support who we already are. And, that's why, honestly, I love having Ben in my life, because he's someone where we partnered on a thing. We just did the Humble Retreat. And he and I are so the same and so unbelievably different. It's awesome, because he challenges me on so many ways of thinking. And I'll challenge him right back. But the thing is, it doesn't end up in this giant, shit show, if you will. I don't know if I could say that. Beep.
Of course you can.
But
we're like cable, anything goes.
Okay, great. So it didn't end up. It really was thoughtful debate and a greater understanding on the end of any discussion. And those are the kinds of people that you want in your life. Austin and I've had 1,000 of these discussions over. I mean, we've been friends for 10 years, or probably more than that, actually. But we've had so many discussions, and those are the people you keep in your life. What I call those people are cornerstones in your life. So you have 3 kinds of people in your life. You have people who need to get out of your life. This is actively the most amount of people you have in your life at any given time, because they're toxic, or they're bringing you down, or they don't respect you. I think respect is the real currency of life. The second kind of human that we have in our life is a stepping stone. These are people you can step on to get to where you're going, but then if they need to go somewhere, they can step on you too. If you are the only person doing the stepping, that means in their life, you are someone that needs to get out. Most people are only using the stepping stone in one direction. Every so often, you get this crazy thing called a cornerstone in your life. Now, these people are so powerful, you can build off of them or with them. But need is not there. It is 100% living in the land of want. And so that's why marriages or relationships that are based on want instead of need are always going to last way longer. Because, we're all capable humans. Yes, you can go to a bar and pick someone up. If you need sex, if you need the physical, if you need those things. But the power is, I want to come home to this person.
It's choice.
I want to be,
I choose you in every moment of every day.
Exactly right.
And that's,
And that.
I'm very fortunate I have that too. So I get you.
High five on that.
We got it.
and that's really what, when, Kayla, I've said this so many times, it's popping up. And, Kayla was one of the things that just was such a catalyst for me in challenging me, grounding me, helping me understand me, loving me in spite of, certainly. But I remember when I asked her, I said, hey, let's do this music thing. Let's start a studio. Because I was gonna produce her and all these things were gonna happen. But then she fell in love with, hey, let's build something. But it was, you're my friend and let's build a business. We were not dating when we first got together. Much like, don't get me wrong, I tried, but she said no multiple times. And when she was going to move up here, she was in investment banking in Wells Fargo, and people were saying, "Why you're losing this job? You're moving away from your friends, your family." And then they ask this thing. They go, "Do you love him?" And she goes, "I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think I love him." And they're like, "Why the hell are you moving up to Denver and getting out of all of, you grew up here, your friends, your family, a great job. What are you doing?" And she looked at her friends, her family, her mom, her dad, and she goes, "I just know. I just know that's where I need to be." And there are a lot of inexplicable things when we try to quantify life, when we try to quantify our why, when we try to quantify all of these reasons for reason. But sometimes you need to just go off of, I just know this is where I need to be. And I've used that so many times, and it changed my life because I truly believe that we make decisions out of 4 places in our body. Our mind, which is very analytical, it's going to slow us down. Our heart, it's going to speed us up. It's going to want to go for gold. It's going to be the consummate optimist. It's going to think it's going to work out. Our gut, which is actually where we should make decisions, and our nuts. That's where we
then
make.
I'm messed up because I don't have any of those.
Well, we can go down here. We'll just call it the lustful desires. This is where the midlife crisis comes from, and so. In this culture, I really do need to find a new word for nuts because it always comes back. It's like, hey, I'm good then. I only got 3. We're make it happen.
Good to go. Yeah.
But the thing is we get these, and that's where ego starts coming in. Keeping up with the Joneses. I want the newer car. I want the new technology. I want the bigger house. I want this. These are the lustful desires. That part of your life is always trying to mess you up. That's what led me to do the trips to Santa Monica when I was a teenager and do all of this stuff. That's what led me to do that, is it was trying to mess me up. It's trying to throw me off of who I was at the core of my being. And your gut, here's the crazy thing about it. Your gut is always right. That's where I just know comes from. Your head and your heart are a checks and balance system in your life that are put there to say, have you become the person you need to be able to follow your gut? And that's where people start messing up because they want to follow their gut too soon. They just know, but they haven't become the person they need to be either in their heart or their mind. The lid on your life is directly proportionate to your psychology and your skills. And I used to do a lot of business coaching, help a lot of businesses out, but I realized I was having the same conversation constantly. Where's your numbers? Where's your this? Have you done this? But I realized I was having the same conversation because people were too prideful. Like, for instance, if you have someone running a business and we go through all the numbers and they have to go tell their wife, hey, I've been mismanaging funds. I've been the reason that we're here, 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 and here. 90% of the time, they're not actually going to go have that conversation. So a year later, a month later, a week later, whatever the coaching schedule is, I have the same conversation because they never actually dealt with the problem. They didn't stop lying. And so I went into the psychology of things like, why don't people take action? Why do people lie? Why are people making this decision? And so that's what it is the head is all your skills and your abilities. Your heart is your character, and your heart is actually the psychology, why you're doing certain things. And people have that a little bit backwards because we have stories that we tell ourselves and we have things that we know. And so if we can start understanding this dynamic, it gives us tools to have a real relationship with our quote-unquote ego. And the best way to think about your ego is like a giant child. A giant child that has no manners and will come in whenever he wants to, whenever she wants to. They're going to show up and they're going to try to control things and impose their will and get you to do certain things. Stop, start, be scared, say yes, say no, dream, attack you from the inside, and giving us our tools to say, okay, what's my heart saying about this? What's my mind saying about this? And then have I become the person to follow what my gut's telling me? Because everyone actually, I think, inherently knows what they need to be doing. Because if they actually turn down the noise enough, they are able to have that conversation inside of them to where, because they know who they are. It's just what happens is the noise of the world. This is why I love the work that you guys do, because I think, what was it, 2 retreats ago? You guys actually came in, led my whole team through that wonderful meditation. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I said, which was so fantastic, by the way, you guys should just do that like once a week, make everyone come, because the world needs it right now. But what happens is, people's expectations and things that you think you should do, and responsibilities and dreams and regrets and the news, TV, all these things is like static that is raising in your brain to the point where you just hear white noise. So when your inner voice is screaming at you saying, this is what you should do, take action right now, move, I want you to go here, you don't even hear it. You can't hear your own inner voice because the world is too loud. And if we can learn how to turn down everything else so we can actually have a conversation and understand what we want. So many of my clients, when I'm talking to them, they're like, I'll say, so what do you want out of life? I don't know. What do you want to do next week? I have no idea. What do you want for lunch? I don't know. Come on. It's because the static is too loud. And it's because they don't know how to have they don't hear their inner voice anymore. They're not getting nudged in any direction. They're getting nudged and pulled in every direction.
And how much of that do you think is also, that's what they've been guided their entire lives? So not only is there all this noise, from the time that we enter this world, we're taught, go where you're told, do what you're told, mm-hmm. from school to everywhere, mm-hmm. our social circles, everything.
We're programmed to mm-hmm. be this version of us.
Yeah. And so what you're doing is teaching tools and skills to mm-hmm. deprogram that, but ego has to play a part in that mm-hmm. because it lets us know where we begin and end. Mm-hmm. So it has to be a tool. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think one of the big things that happened for me, and whether this is, I'm not going to get political because that it doesn't serve anybody, but this is just a great illustration. So I am not saying I am left or right or blue or red or I am purple. Let's just be honest. But being malleable on your beliefs, being malleable on certain values. And I'll give you a great example. So I taught people for a very long time in my coaching. This is actually if you go to my First Percent series, I can't remember what video it is, but it's still in there. And it says, I want you to create ones or tens. And ones or tens is I want you to either love me or hate me, but I really don't care if you're in the middle. And that serves an area of your life. But it's an incredibly good business tactic because you know where everyone stands. Here's the problem that happened. When Trump entered the White House, he's a businessman. He created ones and tens. So he immediately started dividing things. And again, I don't care about the politics of it. I'm just saying division is never a good thing. And what we need to do is have more open minds and understand that, sometimes if this person's a 7, but is that my version of a 7? Is it actually their version of a 7? Or is that their version of a 10, but I think they're a 7, so now I'm judging? You get all of these different things that happen. And so I went back to that thing, and in one of my updated videos that I take people on, I actually change that entire concept, and I do a multi-phase thing to understand here's how my view comes at it from business, relationships, workplace, all of these different things. And I changed what I had previously said and thought. And I think that's the big thing. Most of the time, especially when people put it out on social media or they talk about it or they stand on stage and talk about it, they just think, I have to stand behind this. That's great if you still believe it, but it's okay to change. We're not trees. Like if people are coming to chop down a forest, the tree has no choice. It's going to get chopped down unless that thing gets stopped. If something's coming to chop me down, I have this crazy thing that I can do called get out of the way. And most of the time people get so resolute and they get so convicted on I want to be right or wrong. And one of the things I've been talking a lot about recently is instead of identifying what's right or wrong, let's identify what is true. What is true for you right now? And sometimes when people are freaking out and they are in the wrong, but then we go, what is true? This person loves me. What is true? We have a history. What is true? They've always been there for me. Like, let's start identifying things that are true instead of, you are in the wrong and I'm going to put you in your place. And we get into those things where then, where does the ego happen? Are we momming someone? Are we parenting someone? Are we dadding someone? Are we going to be a friend? And identifying, what thing to deploy at the right time. So what happens is when I was in the business consulting world, it just literally was stacking up skills, stacking up skills, stacking up skills, stacking up abilities, stacking up abilities. But I did not have the psychology to deploy any of those. The businesses that I was talking to, we gave them the blueprint, exactly what to do. But they did not have the psychology or the wherewithal to deploy any of that. And so if we can start focusing on our psychology and our character, then we're able to stay in a more fluid state so that we can have an open mind. We can have open dialogue. One of the things that I think is a great way to put it is people need to start looking for insight, not agreement. Because everyone sits at a table, and there are some things that I'm going to say, you're going to be like, oh, I agree with that. That's awesome. There's other, I think you're completely full of shit. And that's okay, because I still love you, you still love me. But now you at least have insight onto who I am, why I think the way I do, my lens that I look through things that came from my past, that came from my experiences. And then you're going to better know how to say, hey, Greg, what about this? Or, ooh, that's not going to go well. I'm not even having that conversation. And so we're going to just communicate on a much better level if we have proper insight from one another.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We're agreeing. All
there
right.
There we go.
So now that you are a papa, how does all of this insight and knowledge that you have play into the role of parenthood?
Oh, that's a great question. The best way I have found to talk about that is having a kid has sped me up in all of the right areas and slowed me down in all the right areas. Because there's so much of my life where I thought I had to be somebody. Ben actually has this really cool predictive index, and it's basically like this thing of who you actually are and then who you think you need to be. And who I am is like, I've got like this really high A, I can't remember what it means, but then it like kind of goes like this, and I'm kind of in the middle on everything else. But who I think I need to be is like this giant exaggerated version of myself. And it was really insightful because I realized it's like, okay, I always want to be taking action. I always want to be productive. I always want to be doing this, that, and the other. And, the first time Conrad smiled at me, it was like I had slow-mo hit on my life, because I was like, oh my God, that's what matters. That's all I want. I want to, and so, and I immediately set a rule. I will not travel anywhere if Kayla and Conrad are not with me. So we're just coming from San Diego. We're doing this retreat. Ben says, hey, can you help me out with this? I'd also like you to speak. Can you do this, that, and the other? And I've had people turn me down and say, hey, just fly in and then fly back out. It's fine. I'm like, dude, I don't care if it's 1 day or 2 days. I am not leaving my wife and child. This is a non-negotiable for me. But when I said it to Ben, he goes, I would expect nothing less. Of course they can come. And gave us the biggest room in the Airbnb and always made sure Kayla was taken care of. That's a person that you double down on. I always say double down on people who double down on you. And being able to bring Conrad with me and have him always around me and mom, and having him light up when I come home, and me constantly making Kayla mad because because if I come home and he's already sleeping, I'm like, how recent did he go to bed? Because I'm trying to wake him up.
So there's a negotiation.
I'm like, and then he'll kind of roll like this, and he'll kind of open his eye. I'm like, he opened his eyes. She's like, no, do not wake him up. Apparently, this is a big rule for moms. Do not wake a sleeping baby.
Yeah, or you're going to deal with the consequences.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. There's a reason they say if mom ain't happy, nobody's happy. But wanting to really, the best way to put it is when I'm coaching other coaches, one of the big things that I tell people is you need to be able to go there. There's a lot of coaches who will not go there. And that means what you need to say to this person. You know where you need to challenge them. But you are scared of losing the client, or you're scared of making them mad, so you don't go there. And what I realized with Conrad is the most important thing in my life is not to go there, it's to be there. And that is when everything changed. So if Kayla and Conrad are with me, I'm home. And that's why after San Diego, we had some more coaching to do. I was going to stop in Phoenix for 1 day. And, this is my 4th day of being here. But we have that freedom. If I go back, in a week, if I go back in a month, it literally doesn't matter, because Kayla and Conrad are by my side. I am there. And as long as I can fulfill my coaching practice of go where I think I need to go to the best of my ability, and I know that I am going to be there and they are going to be there when I come home, my life is fulfilled. And as long as those things are true, everything else really doesn't matter. And that's what I'm saying. The right, the wrong, the proving, the this, that, and no. What is true? I got to go there and make an impact in someone's life today. And then I was there and my family was there for me when I got home, when I went to go grab lunch. I could bring her a coffee. I can do this, that, and the other. As long as they are there and I get to go there, my life, that's really all I need.
That's incredible, because home is where your heart is. Amen. And your heart is with your family.
Amen. That is so true.
That is a big blessing.
Yeah.
And I know earlier you were talking about ego being necessary because it helps you get your voice out there, mm-hmm. right? But not everyone's going to desire to be on a stage.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
In order to do that. And that won't stop them from being able to get a voice out there.
Exactly right.
So in these people that you coach and you mentor, are there other ways that you help them understand that they can get a voice out there without mm-hmm. having to do what you do, which is be on a stage?
Yeah. I think first we need to understand where there is. So if I'm coaching someone, I say, go there, it is what is needed and necessary. I don't really care about your feelings and I want to make you feel good so you just come back for coaching. I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference. Sometimes that gets very, very hard because I am going to go places that most people won't go by themselves. Their inner voice, they don't even go there by themselves. So there in coaching for me is needed and necessary. Now, externally, if we're talking, is it a stage? Is it social media? Is it just simply telling your spouse, look, this is no longer acceptable. That's a voice that needs to get heard. And most people won't take the time to say, for instance, if there is a spouse that really, really needs their counterpart home at a certain time, but they're always coming home late, but they just never say anything. We're sowing seeds of discord, and that is going to head down a bad way. So if we can use our voice and actually communicate, here's what I need out of this relationship. Here's what I need as a human being. And sometimes it starts with a conversation. The spouse just talks to themselves and says, I need someone who is there. I need someone who I don't have to worry about. And it may not be infidelity. Everyone goes to that. But it might just be as simple as, I'm scared of them being on the road late at night. I'm scared of this. I'm scared of that. Doesn't matter what it is, because that's their truth. But if we can use our voice in what we need and actually have that conversation, and it goes all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning, is just stop lying to yourself. And if we can use our voice on ourselves first, but then communicate to, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a family member. These are the hardest ones because, mom and dad, we're programmed that they're right.
Yes.
We're programmed, respect your elders. Well, what if your elders are dumb? If they're trying to impose, hey, this is a burning building, respect your elders, run into the burning building, I'm going to be like, no. But there's a lot of people out there where their elders are actively saying, run into this burning building, run into this burning building. And people are doing it. When what we should do is say, I have a different perspective. I am going to help you stop, number one, tell people running into this burning building. And I'm going to not let you run into the burning building. And I think that when we get these societal norms, the social norms of our idea of respect, I was talking to one of my clients, and she looks at me and she goes, she was about to send an incredible sum of money to another country that wasn't as bad as, the Nigerian prince that, is getting freed. Yeah, but there were similar yellow flags, not quite that kind of a red flag, but yellow flags. And one of the arguments is she responded to me and she said, but she is a nice elderly lady. Yeah. And I said, not all elderly people, just because they're old doesn't mean they're trustworthy. What is true? What does elderly have to do with any of this? There's a bunch of red flags here, and you're getting asked to do this. So we need to step back and say, hey, we're not running into that burning building. And
you can say no respectfully.
Absolutely.
So that's where the respect can come in, is you can hold a boundary respectfully, but not give them everything they want in order to be respectful.
Exactly.
If what I'm hearing from you is correct.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And in order to be respectful, because I don't want to cut you off, but I keep getting the 5 minutes.
Oh, we got 5. We did it.
Or 1 minute. So I want to make certain that people know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, sure.
If they would like to understand more about coaching or even what you do with KMG Life, how could somebody in our community get a hold of you?
Cool. So KMG Life ends up, from that story, I know we didn't really get into it, but KMG Life ended up being a full-fledged government-approved college. We have 3 colleges, and so we teach people audiovisual, recording, Google AdWords, everything that you can imagine on the technical side of creativity. So if you go to KMG Life, KMG stands for Keep Music Going, KMG Life, L-I-F-E, you can see what we're doing there. From the coaching, the speaking, helping people, what we call unlock the exponential part of your life, that's thefinalpercent.com.
And it's right there.
The final percent. It's thefinalpercent.com, and we're extraordinarily passionate about how to change people at a profound level that is not necessarily all based in, the 6-week plan to a new you. I don't believe in that stuff. Some people can do it, some people can't, but it's all about raising awareness. So when people ask, what is personal growth really? I just tell people, look, all we do is raise awareness. The rest is on you. So I just want to make you aware of some things that you have in your life, for your life, that are available to you. And you can go to thefinalpercent.com and check out everything that we have to offer.
That's wonderful. And we'll include it underneath the video too.
Awesome.
So everybody has the ability to just click and make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Well, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Heart Leader Podcast, where heart and mind align. And we got a little bit of the gut going this time.
I love it.
So until next time, I am your host, Amber, and we were here with Greg Kimble as our guest. And don't forget to check out the Heart Leader Toolbox, where this month we have the Ego Alignment Journal. And we look forward to seeing you in our Sweet Vera community.